afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Today is the 29th of January of our Lord 2024. Welcome to yet another edition of the Coping Hour, hosted by Nicholas Inkle, a.k.a. Motown Noah. Look, I don't think I'm out of line when I say that was the most devastating loss in the history of Detroit sports ever, across the board. And, maybe in a month from now, I'll look back and I'm a little bit prisoner of the moment, being a little bit hyperbolic, such as life on this show, I suppose. But I think even if that ends up being the case, we'll be able to confidently slot it somewhere in the top 5, if not the top 3. But I feel pretty confident right now saying that it's going to be really hard to beat that. It's going to be really hard to think of a circumstance, to think of, a moment building to what that was. For the Lions to be in the driver's seat for the first 30 minutes of that game, to punch one of the best teams in the NFL in the mouth for 30 minutes, getting whatever they wanted. I guess maybe we can start with the good stuff here, because this isn't going to be fun no matter what way I try to do it. The Lions open that game, and that first drive to start with the ball, the 49ers defer. It's like, all right, go do something. The Lions go down the length of the field in 4 plays. Jameson Williams on that reverse, love throwing in a little gadget play to start the game. But here's the thing about if you're a team like the Lions playing a team like the 49ers, even though a reverse isn't really like gadgety, there's still a little bit of trickeration involved. If a play like that doesn't work, what people say? Oh, well, if Detroit is going to resort to pulling out the trickeration this early in the game against a team like San Francisco, that's not a good sign, right? Like if they feel like they need that, shut up. That's not real. Sometimes it's a game and you kind of just want to have fun. Like, who cares? The Lions were having fun. And it truly could not have gotten off to a better start. And that was the story of the first half. The Lions were able to control on defense the middle of the field. They were able to control the boundary, and conversely on offense, they were getting exactly what Jared Goff wanted. He was able to sort of move defenders with his eyes, attack the middle of the field, thunder and flash, with Monty and Gibbs running up the middle, going off tackle, pulling Penei Sewell, letting him, get out in space, make some blocks, make a big play in order to try to spring Monty or to spring Jameer, or hell, even to spring J-Mo on that 40-some-odd yard touchdown run. And there's this moment, if you're a Detroit sports fan, where, I know during this run, I've gate-kept a lot, and I've been like, you guys don't understand, and I can look back on that and understand why that would maybe seem annoying to some people, but truly in that moment, I understand the country was shocked. We were shocked more than anybody because we had never seen our team on this stage, like I said earlier, punch this team in the mouth. A team that we had been looking at all season. I mean, hell, the Chiefs had already shocked the country. We thought it was Baltimore and San Francisco on a collision course for how many months now? And for Kansas City to do what they did, and then for Detroit to start that game the way that they did, you go into the second half, and any given Sunday, right? Any given Sunday, and that's what happened to the Lions. In the span of 8 minutes, the 49ers are able to erase a 17-point deficit. They go on to rattle off 27 unanswered points, and it ended up being too much for Detroit to overcome. It ended up being a hole that they couldn't dig themselves out of on the back of the Lions going for it on 4th down. Brandon Ayuk making the most I can't even honestly say it was the most ridiculous play of the day, because between the two games, I think Lamar's 13-yard completion to himself. Truthfully, maybe I'm just coping, but hey, I would direct you to the title of this fucking podcast, jackass. Give me my space to get my shit off and cope a little bit. I would say Lamar Jackson's reception to himself was probably the play of the day, but that Brandon Ayuk, reception off of Kendall Vildor's face mask, to be able to stay concentrated in that moment and to stay on your feet, to keep your balance, Brandon Ayuk has had a really special season, and it doesn't surprise me that in that moment, it was him to make that type of play. So when you factor that in, like I mentioned, you factor in the fourth down that the Lions could have kicked a field goal. We'll talk about that stuff in just a second. And then the Jahmyr Gibbs fumble. When it rains, it pours, as they say. And that's what we experienced. It just kept happening. And then outside of that, you're having receivers just not be able to catch the ball. For all intents and purposes, Josh Reynolds had a hell of a season. And we know who he is. Like, I think it was the first 8 weeks of the season, every single reception that Josh Reynolds had either went for a first down or a touchdown. That was it. And then I think the first reception that he had that wasn't a first down or a touchdown went for like 9 yards, right? And then after that, I was like, all right, the streak's over. Like, whatever, just get him the ball. Who cares? But he's a big body, and he's got good hands because he's had chemistry with Jared Goff for how many years now? They played together in L.A. When Goff comes over, so does Josh Reynolds, right? These guys know each other. Josh trusts him. Jared trusts him. So that hurt. You even have that sequence where it looked like J-Mo catches the ball and then kind of loses it. It looks like it was Travarius Ward. Forgive me if I'm wrong. It looks like he rips it away and it's a pick, and it's like, no fucking way. Turns out J-Mo ends up getting the ball, whatever. You know, if nothing else, we had a game out of J-Mo and out of Malcolm Rodriguez getting that interception. Good for him, dude. Could not have happened to a better dude. Like, after all of the shit that Malcolm Rodriguez has been through this season, losing his spot on defense, but staying with it, right? Even getting some reps at fullback, catching a pass in the Green Bay game on Thanksgiving, I believe. They're just throwing him out on special teams. Like, he's just waiting on his moment, and he finally gets it in the NFC Championship game, and he comes up with a pick. That felt awesome to see. That felt amazing to see. Even if you're not a Lions fan, but you still watch Hard Knocks. Like, you remember Rodrigo from Hard Knocks last season, right? Had an awesome rookie season, and just kind of sort of fell out of that rotation this year. But he stayed ready. The Lions lose this game, and I know that there's a lot of discourse for people who are just general football consumers, maybe even people who haven't really watched a ton of the Lions this year, but it was easy to root for them and to pick up on them as America's team. To see the Detroit Lions go down the field in two different instances in that fourth quarter, being in field goal range and not taking the points. That's what people want to talk about today for some goddamn reason. I say for some reason. If it was any other team, I would probably be on board with the discussion. I guess here's why it offends me a little bit. How do you think we got here? You think we got here by kicking field goals? You think we got here because Dan Campbell isn't the most aggressive coach in the NFL? If we're going to lose, I would much rather it be on the back of us doing the same shit that we've done all season that got us to this point. And you could say to yourself, like, well, but we also know that our kicker situation all season has been fluky as hell, right? We started with Badgley. Then we kicked him out. We bring in Riley Patterson, and then we kick Riley Patterson out, and then we bring back Badgley for like these last 5-6 weeks. Okay. Well, that first time that we go forward on fourth down, it would have been, the first time, yeah, it would have, probably would have been 3, honestly. Probably. But if Josh Reynolds would have just caught the fucking ball, would have been a first. And then the second time that the Lions go for it on fourth down, it would have been close to a 50-yard field goal, right? It was high 40s. That's not a guarantee with Badgley. So it's either, do we trust Michael Badgley or do we trust this offense that has taken us there every single game this season? This is what Dan Campbell does. Okay? You can call it a gambling problem if you want. I don't care. But if you're going to fall on your sword, hey, man, I'd rather lose playing the way that we have played all season, which is risky. It's taking those high risks. That's the only way that you're going to be able to beat a team like San Francisco is by playing gutsy fucking football. I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want to lose playing a way that like we are just in the moment and trying to be something that we haven't been all season. This is Dan's identity. That's this team's identity. I'm not that upset about it. And the discourse to me is super disingenuous and annoying because it seems like people are forgetting that this is just kind of what he does, for better or for worse. Because there have been plenty of instances this season where I've been annoyed that we've gone for it on fourth down and we haven't gotten it, right? But that's who he is. If nothing else, he's consistent. That's why Brandon Staley doesn't have a job anymore, because he went from like uber aggressive going for it on fourth down, and then he, like, as the years went on, kind of like started to go into his shell, and then every now and then when they would whip out like a let's go for it on fourth down, it's like his heart just wasn't in it, right? It's just that wasn't how they identified as a team, and Detroit does. So that truly is not going to keep me up at night. You know, it hurts because in a moment like this, when your team loses a game of this magnitude, when the stakes are this high, or even if they're not, it's the middle of the regular season, it's just in heartbreaking fashion, your brain needs to blame something. It needs to blame someone. You know, usually you think of the refs. That's the easiest thing to, what do you want me to do? Blame the refs? The refs had an awesome game. Sure, there were like a few missed things here and there. Did James Houston like lead with the crown when Brock Purdy was on the ground? Sure, maybe he did. Whatever. Who cares, right? At this point, who cares? Wouldn't have benefited us anyways. Whatever. We shot ourselves in the foot. We took our foot off the gas. Unforced errors. Mental errors. Jahmyr Gibbs didn't fumble really at all this season. And for him to seemingly go the wrong way, there was some sort of a miscommunication, puts like the wrong hand up on the exchange, and he just lost it, right? Like, for some reason, I can live with that more. I can live with, it was just us. Like, it was just us that lost. And for weeks, ever since that Rams game, it's like, okay, Nick, you really need to start to understand that at any given moment, any game, the magic might be over. The season could be over. This Detroit Lions team that we have poured our heart and souls into, it could be over like that. And we were blessed to get that Rams win. I can't describe to you the feeling of that Bucs win. I've waited truly I'm only 25 years old, but I have waited my entire life. There are people twice my age who have waited their entire lives for a team like this. To be football's pretty important in America, right? It's like indoctrinated in us that it's like the sport. And when you watch everybody around you like go to the party and have fun at some point, and like it's their season and they can kind of get up and it's their moment, you watch everybody do it. It's like a game of musical chairs, but we're always left without a chair. 50, 60 years. We have so desperately wanted a team that we identify with and that we can be along for the ride with and that we can be proud of. We wanted to understand what it feels like to root for a good football team. And they didn't just give us that this year. They gave us a fucking great one. So as devastated and as crushed truly as I am, because it kind of just hit me this morning that it's over. Like, truly it's over. There's no next week. I can't describe to you, like, they could go back and win the Super Bowl next year, and nothing will ever, ever, ever again in my life feel like what this season has felt like. The magic that we have felt, to be like in the spotlight in a way that we've kind of always dreamt of, and that we know as fans we've deserved. Being 25 comes with something, right? I sat through Joey Harrington. I sat through John Kitna, Rod Marinelli. I sat through 0-16. I remember when Calvin caught the ball in Chicago, goes to the ground, and they didn't call it a catch. I remember that game. I remember all of it. I remember Anthony Hitchens in that Cowboys game. I remember the Seahawks, Cam Chancellor batting the ball out of the end zone. I remember the Saints playoff game. And boy, do I remember Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. To be coached by a guy like Dan, to be under the watch of a guy like Brad Holmes, and to be under the ownership of a woman like Sheila. We've waited our whole lives for this. You know, people can say what they want about the assassination of Andy Bernard's character in the final season and a half of The Office, but what he delivered in the series finale of that show has to be the most famous quote from the show. I wish there was a way to know that you were in the good old days before you've actually left them. There's a chance Detroit is never this good again. Truthfully. Isn't that insane? It could be another 50 years until we get back here. In the NFL, your window is so short. In the NFL, your success is not just contingent on how good you are, but also like a million other variables. Who else is hurt around the league? You know, what's going on elsewhere? You just got to play the team that's in front of you, and that's what Detroit did every single week. And to be able to wake up every single Sunday and believe that we had a chance is something I have waited my entire life for. And that's what this team gave us. Yes, I am team. Don't be sad that it's over. Smile because it happened. Doesn't mean that I'm not crushed. Doesn't mean that this isn't fun. Does not mean that I won't be the arbiter of truth and delete all of the comments that are like, ha, 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 49ers. Because I'm very aware that it's going to be a long offseason. Hell, even watching the Super Bowl, they're going to talk about how the 49ers got here, and they're going to have to talk about it. 24-7 is what the Lions were leading by. You were 30 minutes away from a Super Bowl. You're up by 17 points. That's what I'll always remember. Even with all the good, I will always remember how bad this hurts. And that's the other thing I can find some solace in. It's not over. It's not over. I saw some people call this the Lions are on their 2011 Dallas Mavericks run. Huh? You think this isn't real? You think the guys in the locker room are having arguments over who was the best Brad Holmes draft class because this is a fluke? This team's here, man. Like, you can't go to the NFC Championship game every single year. I mean, hey, I guess you can if you're San Francisco or Kansas City, right? And I'm not expecting them to win a Super Bowl next year, but the expectation will once again be to get into the playoffs. This team is good. This team is built for sustained success. That's what I'm excited about. You know, they're going to go after some guys in free agency. We know how well they draft in recent years, right? Gibbs, Laporta, Branch, Jack Campbell. What the hell? That was a real rookie class? You know, you had Jared Goff, top 5 in some pretty major categories. Gibbs and Laporta, Rookie of the Year finalists. Puka Nakua's going to win, but 2 Rookie of the Year finalists. Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year finalist. It really sucks to have to get off the ride, but it's not over. I'm more torn up over this than I have been over. We talk about the Anthony Hitchens play. You know, the Tigers getting swept by the Giants hurt. Armando Galarraga, his imperfect, perfect game, courtesy of Jim Joyce. Truthfully, it all pales in comparison because we had never even made it this far to know what we're supposed to be feeling. And all I can really think is just like how thankful I am to have even had this team to begin with. Go Lions. Let's move on. All right, let's get the energy up. Let's talk about some fun stuff. Woo, everybody get up. Everybody get up. I'm not crying. You're crying. Everybody, let's get excited. The other day on Friday's show, we had to do a brief little recap of Joel Embiid dropping 70 and Karl Anthony Towns dropping 60 in a loss, by the way. Sorry, Karl Anthony Towns. I just had to throw out that. You guys did lose that game because you did not do a lot for your stock in the last like 5-10 minutes of that game. Well, since then, I don't know if did you guys see this? You hear about this? Luka Doncic put up 73, and then on the same night, Book had 60 again. Oh, okay. Name a more iconic duo between Devin Booker's iconic scoring outputs and still losing the game. Devin Booker, I have not forgotten that when... Isn't it crazy that in the grand scheme of things, we aren't that far removed from Devin Booker's 70-piece against Boston, and like all of us kind of being confused on what we were supposed to like, but like, wait, they got smacked, and like he kind of was just throwing shit up because they were down by like 100 the entire game. But at the end of the day, we were just appalled because a lot of us had not seen 70 in our lifetimes. Like, yes, I was alive for 81, but I was 7. So, like, it just didn't really blip on my radar, right? Culturally, I didn't get to enjoy that the way that everybody else did. Also, because, like, social media wasn't really a thing. It was in its very, very brief infancy, 2006. I mean, yeah, we had, like, MySpace, and Facebook was, like, only a year or two old. So there just wasn't really that much, right? Like, people are still, like, sending faxes and, like, beepers in 2006. Not really. But now, you know, we have 2 70-point games in the span of a week. And the discourse surrounding this is kind of what I want to talk about, because I think that's what's the most interesting. Is like, okay, something needs to happen defensively. The NBA needs to look into this defensively. I think it's interesting that that's people's first reactions to it. I understand why, because when you look at a lot of the final scores for these games, like even taking the individual scoring outputs aside, right? Dudes putting up 60 and 70 like seemingly ad nauseum. I think it's the consistent 136 to 141 final scores that are kind of starting to rub people the wrong way. Like, what's going on? And it's, you know, is it as easy to say, well, they're not letting dudes play defense and the offense is the best that it's ever been? I'd love to see you try to guard Luka. Anybody, by the way. I'd love to see anybody try to actually guard Luka. Try to implement a rule that eliminates that little shit that he does at the rim where he just floats in the air, waits for the defender to go by, and then he puts it up. I'd love to see hand checking stop Devin Booker from taking a DHO, getting 2 dribbles on the floor, getting to his spot on the elbow, and just pulling up right between the eyes. I'd love to see hand checking stop Joel Embiid from lulling someone to sleep in the paint and just using, what is he, like 260 probably? Using all of his weight to just bully somebody. Right? Like, it's not always just going to be that easy. Now, I also would love to know what the numbers would say, like, if you just add hand checking. It just always feels really lazy to me when people say, oh, they need to bring back hand checking. My most radical take on this would be eliminate 3 in the key. Let guys camp in the post. Seriously. And I know that all that's really going to encourage is dudes shooting more threes, and then that's going to result in either more inefficient games or on some nights, even higher scoring games, because I don't know if you guys know this, but 3 points is worth more than 2. So that's what I would say. Sure, do the hand checking thing if you want. I don't know what the data says, and you're going to be like, well, look back at the 90s. Dude, it's not even the same game. So that's why I'm saying I don't know really what it's going to do, but sure, I guess if you want to throw it in, eliminate 3 in the key. That is like the hardest zag that I can do on this subject. Because I really don't like being the guy who is sitting here talking about like, oh, this is bad for basketball. This is bad for business. And this isn't fun. Because in 15 years, when the NBA, in some sense, kind of reels this in and gets it under control, we'd like to imagine. I mean, hey, in 15 years, guys are going to be even better. They're going to be even more skilled on offense. Because I also think it's... Look, I never played basketball in an organized way. I only ever played football. So when it comes to like logistics of the sport, I feel more comfortable talking about football because I actually lived it, but I didn't live basketball. So here's what my take on it would be. Isn't it way easier, 15 years down the line, or even if you want to look back 15 years, for dudes to get better on offense than it is on defense? It's so much easier to diversify your bag and like invent moves and shit than it is to really defend them, because there's only so much that you can do defensively. Like, sure, you can work on your footwork, you can work on your coordination, you can work on, I don't know, communication, you can work on physical strength, stuff like that. But it seems like it's easier to throw together, not like TikTok dribble packages, not like the like Julian Newman bullshit that's not even basketball, it's not real, but something closer to like what Devin Booker was doing to the Pacers the other night. Because truthfully, some of those buckets were disgusting. His was a lot more finesse. Luka's kind of was too. I'm just talking comparatively to like Embiid, who, like I said, was just kind of sheer force. And that's all that it was. I don't want to be the guy who's bummed out about this. Because again, in 15 years, we're going to look back as like, this is some proverbial like golden age of basketball where kids are going to be like, wow, like people were scoring that much. Like, it's not going to be fun when guys can't crack 45. And yeah, that'll make it way more special when a dude puts up 50, because now what's the take? 60 is the new 50. I'm not going to say 70 is the new 50 because 70 still blips on our radar. But it's weird because now, I don't know if you guys know this, I have been editing videos for Rusty Buckets on his second channel, which is called also Rusty Buckets. So if you ever see a video put up on there, go ahead and give it a watch, give it a like, support me, support Jacob. Let me know how I'm doing on the edit, by the way. I'd love that. But he made a point the other day that I thought was really interesting because he was right. So Embiid puts up 70 and we get bored of talking about it after a day? Huh? When Book put up 70, look, even if we were talking about like how valid it was, you know, because like I said, they were down by 100 and he was just kind of throwing shit up and it was like, who cares? No one else on this. Who was even on that Suns roster? Was it like Marquise Chris? Was he there yet? Was like Dražen Bender there yet? I don't remember the timeline. It was like 7 years ago. But who else was going to be doing it on that Phoenix Suns team? Like Brandon Knight. I don't even know. Right. People were still talking about it for like a week, though. No matter what the discourse was, it was still part of like the zeitgeist. And because we're so desensitized to it now, and this is where I empathize with people, we talked about Embiid for 2 days, if that, you know, and then the conversation immediately shifted to, oh, he's not going to play against Denver. Like, what a little, is Joel Embiid bitch made? Like, that's what people wanted to talk about all of a sudden. And I guess in a sense it makes sense. And it's also because, well, Luka had just dropped 70. And so we kind of moved on to the new thing. I mean, when in a span of a week, you have 2 guys drop 60 and 2 guys drop 70, what do you want us to do? You know, in the span of what, the last year and change, we've had 4 70 pieces now. That's what it is, right? Huh? Talk about the Lions waiting my whole life for a team like this, just for it to go down this way. We wait our whole lives for dudes to put up scoring performances like this. 4 of them happen in the span of a year. 2 of them happen in the span of a week. And we're just kind of like, oh, yeah, anyways, what else is on? What? That's crazy. Because I think 2 things can be true, that it's annoying, but it's also like, these are anomaly seasons. People romanticize the steroid era of baseball because all it was just like Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa battling to like who can hit 60 home runs first or 50 home runs first, whatever it was, right? That's what people were getting up for. You know, do I think that in 10 years there's going to be some revelation that a bunch of these guys were like taking HGH and a bunch of other PhDs. I don't think any of these guys are, you know what I mean though? Like, well, what's weird is like LeBron's just gotten away with it for 20 years. Is it the biggest open secret in sports that somebody has been taking PEDs their entire life and we're all just kind of like, sure, but it's LeBron. Like, and I'm being serious. In 5 years, if there was a bomb that dropped that, you know, Fox News comes out and is like, golden boy of the NBA, LaChina James, found taking human growth hormones and you know, whatever other PEDs, are we not all just going to be like, like what else? Like, what's the story? What's the bomb, Fox News? And they're going to be like, that he's taking HGH. And we're all going to be like, You know? Is that why I think Luka and Joel Embiid are putting up 70? No. No, but it's the principle of we loved the steroid era of baseball when stats were just fucking to the moon, but in basketball we're just not able to enjoy it. Why? I don't know. But I also, again, I empathize with those people, and I am also desensitized to it, and I think it's annoying. Wow, Nick, great podcasting to be like, I think both groups of people are right. But they are. And I'm sorry for being a diplomat, but by the way, that's not the worst thing in the world, because that's how you end up with Skip Bayless, is when people are like, no, I have to have an opinion on this. I have to be in one camp, and that's it. I can't have any other opinions on this. Because then even when you're presented with evidence that would suggest that the other group is right, you just have to zag so hard and be like, nope, they're wrong, they're idiots, and then you like alienate yourself and you radicalize yourself to something that's not even real. NBA points are at an all-time high. NBA enjoyment is at like an all-time medium. It's weird. And let's move on. In the last week, we've gotten a ton of baseball emails, and 3 of them were the exact same. So I'm going to kind of boil them down into like one email. One of them even came from Australia. I got to tell you guys, for my American listeners, you guys don't even know that Australians are starting to infringe on your territory as the number 1 listeners of this show. Truly a staggering number of Australians listen to this show. Hey, I love it. Shout out to the Outback. When I was in middle school, here's a little Motown Noah anecdote about Australia. I was in middle school like 15 years ago, right? And I remember learning at the time that Australia's ozone like didn't exist. And what we were led to believe was like, that means if you walk outside without a hat on, skin cancer, like immediately, like fresh off the plane. If you're not wearing a hat, you're cooked. And so for my entire life, I was more scared of Australia because of its non-existent ozone than I was of like all the, people usually say like the snakes and the spiders, the insects and everything that comes with it. I was more scared about skin cancer. I only learned like a year ago that it has since like reformed and I guess is like not just a big hole anymore. So thank God I can go to Australia. Thank God Australians aren't just getting skin cancer left and right anymore. Although maybe I should say if it does reopen, that you guys should stay inside. Just listen to the Coping Hour to avoid getting skin cancer. There's probably a slogan for the show in there somewhere. Sneaky too, and I know this is supposed to be about baseball. I apologize. The 4th largest demo of this podcast, of this show, in the month of January, Ukraine. Okay, cool. Love it. I don't know how you guys are. Maybe if you're in like Western Ukraine, you got like the Starlink hooked up. I don't know. Hey, stay safe out there. Jesus, thanks for listening to the show, I guess. Also in the month of January, on YouTube specifically, this is not the case on Spotify, on YouTube specifically, 99.9% male audience. Shout out to my mom and shout out to my grandma for I'm assuming, being literally the 0.01%. Anyways, baseball. If you are a non-American listener, even if you're a U.S.-based listener and you just don't have a local team, maybe you're living in like Montana or one of the Dakotas, Wyoming, something like that, and you're just like, who do I root for? Like, I kind of want to get on board. My advice to you, and baseball fans are going to be like, oh, boo, you're a scumbag, shut up. Root for the Dodgers this year. Because if you are trying to get into the sport, my recommendation would be to root for an all-star team. A team that for 162 games, top to bottom, has like 3 MVPs and is just an all-star team. If you can't have fun watching that, then the sport's probably just not going to be for you. Now, what they end up doing in the postseason, in October, remains to be seen. It will be the funniest, truly funniest collapse in maybe the four major American sports if the Dodgers just don't win a World Series. Even if they win one, but that like next year they lose one, I don't think it would be as funny because at least they got one, right? But for all intents and purposes, they better win a lot of them. I think that's got to be it. And I, to be fair, would have said this about any team that Shohei went to, especially if he came to the Cubs, which in my heart, I thought maybe we were getting there. I thought maybe he was going to come to the Cubs. Unless he went to the Yankees, then I probably wouldn't have said that because I'm never going to encourage anybody to root for the world-class New York Yankees, right? I think my favorite take that my girlfriend has about any sport, any player, it mainly picked up this last summer when Shohei he was on a tear that, I mean, how am I supposed to quantify it? Every single night was like 9 strikeouts, 6 home runs, 2 doubles, and 14 RBIs. I said, all right, sweetheart, you see what Shohei did tonight? She goes, who cares? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, it's just not impressive to me. I was like, what's not impressive to you? I'm like, he can like clock 99 on the gun and rake for 530. We've never seen this before. People be like, oh, well, it hasn't been done since like Babe Ruth. It's like, okay, well, Babe Ruth was smoking cigarettes and cigars on the field, right? Like that guy wasn't even a real person, okay? And she's like, he's a professional athlete. You telling me they can't all throw and hit? And I was like, huh. Well, when you reduce it to that, when you water it down like that, sure. She's like, I thought they were just all doing that. And I was like, no, they don't all do that because it's really hard to do one of them. Like, it's really hard to hit a baseball from a professional pitcher. It's really hard to strike out a professional hitter and to be able to do both of those at the level that she goes, that just doesn't do anything for me. It's wild to me that she loves him as like a dude because he's adorable and hilarious. Although here's my thing. I don't get this. I swear he can speak English and he's just lying. I've seen a video of him speaking English and I was shocked because I had never heard him do it before. And it was like perfectly fine. And so I'm just like, does he just like put on this facade that he doesn't so that he can just keep his translator buddies around, which honestly would be hilarious. He just wants a friend and he's just like, because that way he doesn't have to directly deal with the media and he's technically delegating it to somebody else and then he can just kind of say whatever, you know? I don't know. Because I was watching this like YouTube short and this kid was like, not like gay son or thought daughter to Shohei Ohtani, but it was like something that adjacent. And Shohei was just like full English. I had never heard it before. It blew my mind. Yeah, root for the Dodgers, dude. Be a Dodgers fan. Anybody who emailed into the show wondering what team you should root for this year, be a Shohei Ohtani fan. All right, let's move on. It's been a while since we've done a creator advice segment. And since I'm feeling really emotional today over the Lions game, I figure it would be a good day to veer some credit or some positivity rather in the direction of some of you guys out there who are looking to sort of break into the game, the proverbial industry, right? Subject line, any advice for someone who's trying to tap into sports media? From Jinx. Hey, Noah. I've really been enjoying the podcast and has given me some motivation one day to start one of my own, but I struggle with a high level of anxiety and confidence of ripping off the Band-Aid. It's very crazy. I have a long-winded conversation and hot takes amongst the guys, but when it comes to doing something similar to you on camera, I freeze or overthink it. Any advice, brother? You have to do it to have done it. You know? You have to go into this. If you're out there right now, you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, you're thinking about starting a podcast, whatever medium it is that you're trying to break into, even if you're trying to be a writer. Well, actually, if you're being a writer, this doesn't apply to you at all. But if you're trying to be the former too, the deck is stacked against you. The numbers are stacked against you. Do you know how many people start a podcast every single day? A lot. Because it's the most accessible that the medium has ever been. Anybody can do it. Right at the beginning of this show, if you listen to it on Spotify, there's an ad read for Spotify for Podcasters. You can do it for free. You literally just sign up with your Spotify account. You don't even have to have a paid Spotify account. And you can distribute the podcast through literally any platform that you listen to podcasts. Like that. You can just wake up one day and decide to start a podcast. That would be my advice to you, dude. And maybe if you're having some trouble like getting some, like the formula of it down, the structure of it down. So what I did for this show was after the Bun and Cardigan show ended, I kind of took like a month to figure out what I was going to do, if I was going to do anything, because truth be told, I was very confident with the idea that I was just done and I was never like, okay, I had my shot in this quote unquote industry and I blew it, however you want to look at it, but like it's over, right? Excuse me. So I kind of then had to pivot, and I spent like another month after that testing, and I did like 5 or 6 complete shows that I didn't upload and I never will like just trying to figure out what the rhythm, what the cadence, what the tone of the show is going to be. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world for somebody to do, is to literally just practice getting your fastballs out, right? Throw some BP. If you don't want to do that and you just want to go straight for it, go straight for the jugular, people will find you. Do not let the numbers discourage you, because they might be pretty bleak early on. You know, it's never fun to do the thing where you have to, you know, post it on Facebook for all of your relatives to see, you know, and for all of your like high school friends to see, and all of your, you know, but in a lot of ways, that's what you have to do. You have to establish that you're taking this seriously so that people take you seriously. You have to believe in the things that you're saying. The hot takes that you're delivering cannot be hot takes just for the sake of being a hot take, right? Don't be the contrarian just to be the contrarian. If you don't believe what you're saying, nobody else will. I've talked about this before. There are segments on this show where you can tell halfway through it, I've mentally punted because I don't like the direction that it's going, and I just kind of have to slog my way through it. I'm sure in a lot of those instances, that's when people start to tap ahead. That's when that plus 10-second button is looking real sweet, you know. And I also think that people get really focused on well, I guess in 2024, you do need to be focused on this. Here's the real takeaway. If you want to succeed in this medium, you're going to have to make your stuff digestible for like TikTok. Something that I refuse to do because I'm not focused on the growth of this show. I'm focused on the quality of it. I'm very comfortable with having an audience of like 3,000 to 5,000 people. I love that. I love that very tight-knit community because I feel like we're all in this together. And that would be my other piece of advice, is forming some sort of a community is going to be one of those first goals that you want to try to achieve, is create a place where people, not like a safe space, but a place where people flock to once a week, twice a week, however often you plan on uploading, you know, where people just want to hang out for a while. Are you that kind of guy? You know, it's tough for people. I think something I've always wanted to like make I don't know if it's like a video or a short film. I am so fascinated by the psychology of what happens to a person the second that they're on camera. The second that they know that a camera is on them somewhere in the room, a person changes. And how a person changes is always what's fascinated me. I'm saying this to say, whoever you are as a guy, please just be that guy. Because it can be really exhausting if you try to create a character like I did. And this idea that like Motown Noah was me, yeah, in some sense, but that was it was like a performance. There was some theater to it when I was on camera in front of a broken closet door, even in front of Cade. Like there's some character to it. And God forbid you start to succeed with that, because if you're not mentally disciplined the way that I wasn't, it becomes really difficult to separate that. Because then at your most successful, you are this person, but not when you're yourself. And so it gets really hard to turn it off. And that's kind of why I went into like a mental spiral, is because I just didn't know when to turn it off. And I didn't know like, okay, well, I made this money when I was this person. And when I was just Nick, like nobody cared, you know? So I would say try to avoid being a character. And a lot of that comes with the hot take stuff, right? Because I made the joke earlier, but that's how we get Skip Bayless. But that's actually how you get Skip Bayless. You don't want to be that guy. I don't care how much money he's made. You don't want to be that guy. You know, you don't want your thing to be the guy who will just say the most insane thing, even if it's not true, just to invoke a certain reaction. Stick to your truths. I would also say, like, if you don't have anything to say on something, there are plenty of like popular topics that I just don't touch because I don't have a take. I don't have a take that isn't unique, that isn't new. When I started doing this, it was because I truly in my heart believed that I was seeing the game in a way that maybe other people weren't. I can look back and say, like, that's horseshit. You were 19. You literally didn't know anything at all. But I felt like I was able to articulate my experience in a way that would resonate with other people. So that's sort of a lane that worked for me. But now I kind of am just more comfortable with, like, did you see this? Did you hear about this? But if I don't have a take, I'm not going to touch it. You don't have to, force your way into every conversation just because the algorithm's going to like it or it's like SEO favorable. Do not make content for Google's SEO. Do not make content for YouTube's algorithm. Make content for you. Make content that in your heart you care about. Even if, like, you're a big MMA guy. I don't know if MMA YouTube is big, right? I know it's comparatively not as big as, like, NBA YouTube. It's not as big as NFL YouTube. It's probably not as big as, like, soccer YouTube, right? But it exists. Invade the space. Occupy it. It's yours. Make sure you're believing everything that you're saying. I hope this went somewhere. I hope this worked for you. Let's move on. Let's wrap up today's show. I guess maybe a little bit shorter of an episode today just because I'm sorry, I'm in my feels today. Believe it or not. I said I wasn't if the Lions if they lost in a certain fashion that you wouldn't see me on Monday and that I would just wait until Tuesday to record, but I'm a grown ass man. Like, I can sit in front of a microphone for an hour. It's not that big of a deal. I am still very broken up and I kind of just don't care about stuff today. And that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm about to talk about, but you guys want to have, like, a real conversation? You guys want to, like, level with each other for, like, I don't know, a tight 5 to 7? Oh, man. Mentally just been so exhausted the last few weeks. Both with stuff that's, happening in real life and, there's going to be a pretty major life event that happens for me here in a few months, and I'm just feeling very overwhelmed. I think I mentioned a couple episodes ago that creatively, like, I kind of had a little bit of a breakdown the other night, and I had to talk to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, I know, like, I've never felt this way before, where I can feel, like, physically, I feel like I'm on the verge of, like, a creative breakthrough, and I don't know what medium that would exist in. As somebody who, I love writing screenplays. I love writing scripts for things that I never use, that I will never, see it to come to fruition. But I just always have all of these ideas and I just kind of want to get them down. And in an ideal world, like, yeah, I just kind of just pump out a bunch of short films and, like, that's what I do. So I don't know if it's through virtue of that or I would like it to be through this show. Maybe once we get to episode 30, and that, because, as they say, it's not a real show until you get 30 episodes in the can. We are like 2 months away from that happening. Dude, I'm so excited for episode 30 because I'm going to feel so validated. Like, dude, good job, Nick. You stuck with this thing for 30 episodes. Not that I'm going to punt and be like, now I don't have to do this anymore. No, but, like, I'll just feel very like, okay, this is a real show. I'll give you guys some ideas of, like, what I'm kind of thinking of. Like, one idea that I had, but this just didn't feel like very creative breakthrough enough, was I was like, what if every episode of the Coping Hour had a bottom ticker? Like, on ESPN, you throw on Sports Center, and while, they're talking about whatever game, you can just read the bottom line and see the scores from last night and all the important stories. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I even thought about implementing that on some of Jacob, aka Rusty Bucket's videos, and, shooting him the idea and being like, is this interesting to you? And I even tested it to, like, kind of send him an idea, an example of it. And then it just turned out to be, like, way more work than what would be necessary. Like, it ultimately the juice wouldn't really be worth the squeeze. So I just kind of was like, all right, this isn't going to be the idea. Also because it involves a little bit of tooling around in After Effects, and After Effects to me is like the last bastion of the Adobe Creative Suite that I just haven't needed yet, and I just haven't tooled around with yet. I'm only just now in the last month becoming, like, Photoshop proficient, and I'm still not very good at it. Like, the worst thing that anybody could have done is letting this guy have access to a drop shadow. I love a good drop shadow, and I will place one anywhere that I can, even when it is not necessary, just because I love how it looks, and I love the depth that it can add to an image. I just love it. You know, I'll throw it on some text, even when I don't need to, even when the text doesn't even, like, it doesn't contrast with the background in any sort of way. It's perfectly visible, but I will just, boom, drop shadow. I just love it. Premiere, obviously, I'm a fucking wizard in Premiere. Like, nobody can fuck with me in that. I also got really good at using DaVinci. And DaVinci is a free-to-use service. There is a paid version, but the free version, you can literally do everything that you're going to need to do. Like, you'll be fine in the free version. But Premiere, obviously, working in there, oh, it feels so good. But it's kind of horseshit. Can I complain about something super-duper niche that just isn't going to do anything for people who don't edit anything and they don't use Premiere? If I'm using DaVinci and I want to do like a motion graphic, right? I want a little picture to slide onto the screen for 5 seconds, and then I want it to slide away. If I'm in DaVinci, I just drag the image to the timeline. I hit like 2 buttons. I hit a checkbox for motion blur, drag the slider to like 90%, done. Cool. That's literally it. When you're in Premiere, and I get why, because Adobe Premiere is like the big leagues. You know, that's what like Hollywood uses, that and like Final Cut. It's like drag the image to the timeline, set the keyframes, and then like go down, add the keyframes again, drag over the transform effect, hit scale. Like there's just so many more levers that you have to pull, and it's just so much more of a tedious process just for the sake of, and I guess it's just more in depth, and it just gives you more creative liberty to kind of tool around with some stuff. But it can just be so damn irritating when Jacob will send me a raw file that's like 27 minutes long, and I know I'm going to have to make like 40 assets for it. But like there's so much shit that goes into it that I kind of wasn't expecting, and the challenge, and I think maybe that's why I'm feeling this way a little bit too, is because now that I'm editing for Jacob and I have this other thing that I'm doing, creatively I'm just feeling very motivated. And so Jacob, I know this will make you feel good to hear, I'm very thankful for this position, because I've always viewed myself more as a behind the scenes guy than an on-camera guy. Even like when I was with Wave, like working at Buckets, I was like, I just feel like I should be a producer. I don't think I should be the one that's on camera. So I'm enjoying and he gives me complete free reign. Like the creative liberty that I have to edit these videos, I can pretty much do whatever I want within reason. I'm never going to fuck up his videos, because ultimately I know this is his baby and it's my job to make him look as good as I possibly can. But that's what's fun to me, is the challenge of that. Not that he makes it hard or anything, because he's really, really good at what he does. But I always love going into every single video being like, how can I be even that much better to make the videos even that much better for his viewers? You know? I'm sorry, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just feeling very weird emotionally lately, and no, it's actually not because of the Lions. I have just been, I'm not just being ridiculous. I have been feeling this way for a little bit. I just know creatively, man, like, so if you're feeling like this too, like you're just in this like creative rut and you don't know what it is, I would love to know what you guys are doing to feel better about it. Like sometimes I'm like, do I just need a different outlet? Because everything I do is just in this chair on this computer. I don't even really utilize my 3070 trademark sign that much. Like I was trying to play Hell Let Loose the other day. What a bullshit game that is. Walking simulator for 30 minutes, and then you just get sniped out of nowhere. And then it's like, okay, back to the beginning. And then you walk for 30 more minutes just to once again get sniped out of nowhere. You're dead in the middle of the field. So then I started like hugging this tree line, because I was like, well, maybe they just won't see me. Dead again. I uninstalled the game after 15 minutes. I was walking for a cumulatively like 13 of those minutes, and I never saw a single person. I died every single time. What the fuck? That game sucks. Also, because my graphics card was like, my fans were going nuts. So I turned down the settings a little bit, and then I died again. I was like, this game is horseshit. I'm not playing this. Where's Fall Guys? I'm going to play Fall Guys. Where's Amogus? Alrighty, folks. If you are listening to this on Spotify, be sure to rate 5 stars. If you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a like. Leave a nice little subscribe. Love you all very, very much. And I will catch you guys
Computers now have
in the
primary
next
control.
Beautiful, beautiful,
Primary control.
beautiful,
Primary control.
beautiful,
Primary control.
beautiful.